TitleMatchNetwork.com.
When was the first time you met the original Sheik? What are your memories of?
First time I met the original Sheik, his very best friend, who had really helped me a lot learn the business, was Leapin' Larry Shane. Leapin' Larry Shane was coming back. He had I think, it was 8 children, and he had always worked in the Detroit area for Burt Ruby. We had a great promotion right there locally, and that's where the Sheik started. Larry had gone to Minneapolis to work a couple of matches, was driving back, and was killed in an automobile accident. So we were at Larry's funeral when the Sheik come in, and he come in, dressed like the Sheik would.
Right.
I don't mean but very, very silk suit type thing, real tight glasses, and they were like brothers, they were very close. The thing that I always felt was bad about that incident was if Larry Shane hadn't died at that time and the Sheik came in as a promoter in Detroit, they would have been dynamic, and we would all made tons of money.
Right.
Because Larry was the type of guy that would make sure that other guys were getting paid properly too. But Larry died. The Sheik came in about 1.5 years later. That's when I really met him. And I learned a lot of my character from the Sheik. I look at the Sheik as one of the wildest, greatest heels in the history of the business. I look at George Steele as one of the wildest, greatest heels in the business. But a lot of things he did, the gimmick,
Right.
hiding, put it in my mouth, and standing on all that I learned from the Sheik, watching him. He never wanted to use a gimmick in Detroit,
Right.
because that was his deal. In fact, one time I come to New York and I was back in there for them, and he knew I was doing it in Detroit. He started looking at my bag. I said, "Put your hands out my bag." He said, "You got a foreign object." I said, "You put your hands in my bag, you'll be a foreign object." I'll take care of your business here, but you get out of my business right now.
Right.
And that was important because, again, it's laying that level of who you are,
Right.
which you always had to do in the business in those days.
Who would you consider your mentor early on in your career?
Burt Ruby.
Okay.
Burt Ruby. Burt Ruby taught me a little, he didn't take me to the ring and teach me the wrestling part of it. He taught me the leverage of the business and how to work promoters, how to work the guys, how to work the business. And he told me I had no intention, first of all, of ever leaving the Detroit area. I was a part-time wrestler, school teacher, and I was a number school teacher, and I didn't want to leave my kids, my family, and all that, so it was very important to me. So when we got to that part of it, he said to me, he says, "You'll always, if you go out on the road, you'll always have a safe haven to come back to if things don't go right." What are you talking about? I ain't going nowhere. But that was really important in those days. I mean, if I had left, and I didn't leave the Detroit area till about 4 years later, and Bruno Sammartino came into Detroit to wrestle Bulldog Brower.
I was going to ask you, that's my next question.
And I'm a little bit ahead of you.
That's good. That's good.
And Bulldog Brower and him had a match, and I was supposed to work that night with Mark Lewin. He was the main event. The Sheik was having some work done on his behind.
Right.
He had, what do you call him?
Tailbone?
No, when you have...
Hemorrhoid?
Yeah, hemorrhoid.
Right.
He had a hemorrhoid operation. And so he was going to work with him, and I was supposed to work a tag team with Mark Lewin and the announcer from Detroit. What's his name? You should know that. Lord Layton. Lord Lansdowne Layton. And then me and Killer Cox. Well, Cox and Lewin were always guys that would pull deals anyhow. I got in the ring now. I'm supposed to work a return.
Right.
To come back with Lewin. I walk out, and all of a sudden, as Lewin walks by, Cox jumps off the apron, grabs the ring, and boom, and he gets blood, and that's your next main event. And I'm standing like, now I got screwed.
Right.
I got screwed big time that night. I did get my first main event in Detroit. But that same night is when Bruno was there with the entourage from New York, and they spotted me working with somebody else, and we had a great match. And they come up to me afterwards and just asked me a few questions, end of story. And about 2.5 weeks later, Bruno Sammartino called me, which gave me chills because there's a real champion of the world, I thought, boy. And he said, "I'd like you to come to Pittsburgh and work a program with you." And I said, okay. And we went in and we worked, he had just taken over as a promoter there.
Right.
And they had a pretty decent house, about half full. We worked I worked, I think, twice before I worked with him. And one was just a singles match with one of the guys. And then it was a tag team with me and Bill Miller against him and probably the Batman. It sounds funny now, but it was Tony Marino. And then we worked an angle out of that where it was Bruno and I in the main event. That was their first sellout.
Well-
Then we had 3 of them in a row. Bam, bam, bam. It was time to go back and teach. And this was during the school year, by the way, but Detroit was a 30-minute flight. I could coach football, jump on a plane. It was easier than driving to Grand Rapids
Right.
and do a thing. And so that was really great. When I left there, this is what made George Yanlo Steele. This is really the key to my success. When I went there, after I got done with the program, I come back and the Sheik started telling me about how much Bruno was complaining about how heavy I was and how stiff I was. And I was stiff, but so was Bruno. I mean, he worked that way. So anyhow, he's telling me that he's really bad-mouthing me and knocking me. And when I was in Pittsburgh, every show, Bruno would tell me how much he enjoyed working with me. He would show me the books and the actual house and what percentage I was getting paid, how much money I was getting paid. The only promoter that ever did that.
I was going to say that, yeah.
And I was getting paid very, very well. I mean, my biggest paycheck in Detroit was $75. So I was getting paid very, very well. I was making more money in that one match than I make, 2 matches for my whole school year.
Wow.
So it was pretty huge. So anyhow, I was telling him, boy, I'm really happy with the payoffs.
Right.
Not too happy because there was more. And then the Sheik started telling me how he was complaining. And then they started getting words back to Bruno that I was complaining about the payoffs. And that's how you split people apart.
Right.
So he called me up about 6 months later, and Bruno's a hardhead. So is George. And he called me up, started telling me that they need somebody in New York. Vince McMahon needs somebody to come into New York, and I've recommended you, but you're a real jerk. We got to get this straightened out. And meanwhile, I'm yelling at him. You're a jerk. And we're going back and forth. Finally, he said, shut up and listen a minute. I showed you the books. I showed you the payoffs, and you were happy with them. How come you knocked my payoffs? I said, I never did. But you told me you enjoyed my matches. You enjoyed working with me. How come you were knocking my matches all over the country to these people? He said, I didn't do that. So what did it do? It bonded us. I mean, it made us really partners in a business situation.
Right.
And then he kind of guided things for me going into New York and Pittsburgh, and we became very, very close. We fought like heck in the ring. And people say, and kids today think that because the business is a work, that it's easy. It's not easy. I mean, if you're working them, we got blood the hard way often. We did things tough, and they still do that in some places.
Right.
And I don't believe in throwing light bulbs down, taking bumps on it and tacks and all that crap. No. I'm talking about working the crowd, and you never get today. And Vince's show, and Vince should know better, but Vince was like a kid. And most of my respect in business came from his dad, Mr. McMahon Senior, and that's who I dealt with personally, and it was really a close bond. When the kid came on the scene, it was not that I disrespect him, I don't, but it was not the same level, and he's caught up in a situation, and I'm getting way ahead of myself, so we back off of that. But kids today don't have the opportunity to go and learn to work. They're great athletes. They just don't know how to work.
It's all spot, and
and talk. When you're talking, if I'm in the ring and I yell down to you, you're a big fat lady or whatever I want to call you.
Right.
That's not heat. That's just a debate. It's not even cheap. It's just garbage. I've got to go through my opponent, and he's got to sell it to you. Now I get heat. I make you want to ride. I make you want to burn the arena down.
Right.
But if I'm just hollering at you, you hollering back at me. I mean, that's nothing.
TitleMatchNetwork.com